open up the door.
Howdy y'all, it's day 3 of Octoberspook 2024. I hope y'all enjoy this video. This one's a little longer, okay? It is by Horror Writer 1717. I have read things from him before and I really do enjoy his stories. It is called I Hate Halloween, My Neighbor Always Goes Crazy. Part 1. I don't know if there's going to be any more parts to this. I didn't realize it was a one like that, but I will read part 2 if one comes out, okay? But this is supposedly part 1. I hate Halloween. All the punks and no good nicks seem to feel that this is a time of year that they can get away with their crap. My neighbor Sam was one of the biggest reasons I hated this so-called holiday. He loved to decorate for any and every holiday, but for Halloween. He seemed to go overboard. It was nothing for him to dig up his entire yard and plant gravestones. Yes, real gravestones. I have no idea where he gets them every year, but the day after Halloween, they're all mysteriously gone, and his lawn looks immaculate again. I'm not saying he's a bad person, because he's not. We've had many conversations as we take a break from mowing our respective lawns, and I find him a very knowledgeable and fun person to talk with. He is verbose on many subjects. It's just when Halloween comes around, he transforms into this other person. Someone who seems to feel that if he doesn't turn every inch of his property into this horrid, bloody display of the macabre, then the world will come to an immediate end. He's quite a good method actor as well. Once he starts decorating, his personality changes. He becomes aloof and cagey. By the time the 31st rolls around, he is an absolute basket case of paranoia, trying to scare me every chance he gets. I've tried playing along and letting him have his fun, but it doesn't matter how many times he scares me, he always tried again the next day. He goes beyond the jump scare. He'll peek out his window looking like he's terrified, and then pull the blind shut as quickly as possible. Look around to see what's frightening him. All that's around is me. I think he's trying to make me paranoid. It would be easy just to stop talking to him, but he's the only person in the neighborhood that I enjoy talking to. Long ago, I wrote off the rest of my neighbors for a myriad of reasons. Too uppity, too rich, too poor, stupid little yappy dog that chases me down the street. You get the picture. I work from home, so I don't have to go outside if I don't want groceries, and whatever else I need is delivered right to my door. So why do I go outside and stare at the gruesome display of wanton morbidity? I don't have the answer to that question. It's almost like I'm drawn to it, whether I want to be or not. Like people watching a car wreck when they pass by, I find myself often staring at one gravestone or another for hours at a time until something breaks my concentration and I'm able to back away and retreat into the house away from the windows. Other neighbors have done the same thing as they walk past his house. They stop and stare, mesmerized as well as repulsed by the bloody, gore-stained mayhem that lies before them. Even little ankle snapper dogs stop and stare at the display. Once he has his torture chamber on display, that's when the punks of the neighborhood take their cue that it's time to rain mischief on the neighborhood and all the unsuspecting victims in it. I'm sure the grocery stores around the neighborhood secretly love it when the punks come in and buy dozens upon dozens of eggs, along with cases of toilet paper, knowing exactly where it's going to end up. Toilet paper, eggs, flaming bags, and dear God, the corn. A few years ago, I had a little renovation done. My deck roof was in bad shape, so the repairman told me that metal roofing would last longer. It was spring, so the horrid holiday was nowhere near my daily thoughts yet, and I unfortunately agreed. Not every night the corn bounces off said roof, sounding like someone standing at my back door firing a machine gun. The first few dozen times it happened, it scared me so bad I nearly soiled myself. Now I just turn up the TV or radio once the veil of the night falls, and the wretched urchins prowl about bent on property destruction. Sure, they hit other houses, including mine, But the main target is always my neighbor's elaborate display. They rain down eggs and toilet paper covering the entire area. The gravestones turn from gray to white with sticky yellow smears. By the time they're done, most of the display is invisible under layers of TP eggs and whatever else they can find. And yet, every morning the place is clean. No evidence that any vandalism had happened. The first few times it happened, I was surprised, but figured Sam had come out to clean it up. Having put so much effort into this little land of macabre, he wanted to take care of it. After a while, I began to wonder how he could clean so much in so little time. I decided to investigate one night when the no-good Nicks had left a particularly dense layer, covering the gravestones and other decorations. Every single item had something hanging, draping, or dripping from it. Honestly, I didn't know where the kids came up with the money to do such damage on a nightly basis. I got a cup of coffee and settled into a rocking chair that faced my neighbor's house, then waited. For the longest time, nothing happened. I sipped my coffee and rocked absently, allowing the quiet creak of the chair to lull me into a relaxed state. It wasn't long before my eyelids became heavy. My coffee cup was nearly empty, but I was still having a hard time staying awake. When I went to the kitchen for a refill of wacky juice, I saw a flash through the window that appeared to be lightning. It seemed odd because I hadn't noticed many clouds. I'd been staring at the stars not long ago to try to keep myself interested. I waited to hear the thunder, but all I heard was silence. For a flash that bright, I would have expected a loud boom fairly soon after, but it never happened. I shrugged it off as a passing cell and climbed the stairs back to my observation spot. When I settled back into my chair and glanced out the window, my eyes grew wide at what I saw. The entire yard was clean. I scanned each gravestone, statue, and piece of brick and brack that was planted in the yard. Everything, all of it was pristine, like it had just been set up that very day. "That's not possible," I said, setting my coffee down and standing in front of the window for a better look. I glanced over at the clock that read 2:12 a.m. I must have fallen asleep and didn't notice him cleaning up before I went to refill my coffee, I thought. It was the only thing that made sense. A yawn escaped me, reminding me that it was long past my bedtime. I turned away from the pristine display and went to bed unsatisfied, but knowing I wouldn't see any more tonight. Even though I was tired from staying up late, my sleep was fitful. My dreams were filled with someone chasing me, and I couldn't escape no matter how fast I ran. Work that day was a tedious affair, being irritable and unable to concentrate on the task at hand. I quit early to take a nap in the late afternoon. I planned on staying up again to solve the mystery of my neighbor's yard. I was startled awake by the sound of corn pelting the metal roof of my deck. I yawned and stretched, getting up from a restful sleep and going down to make myself some coffee. When I came back upstairs to assume my position in front of the window, the clock read 11:11 p.m. Peering out to the scene of the carnage confirmed that the neighborhood punks had done their deed yet again. I absolutely wondered if they were getting tired of doing this night after night, only to find no evidence of their hijinks in the morning. Did they walk past his yard every morning on their way to school and wonder like me how Sam had managed to clean up such a mess in such a short amount of time? Did it strengthen their resolve to do it again that same night? Or was the repetition beginning to wear on them? I pondered this as the putrid yellow of the streetlight bathed the scene of an eerie glow. Even though the display was annoying, you had to hand it to Sam. He nailed the Halloween mood. Rocking slowly and repetitively had me lulling myself to sleep again. I'd come prepared tonight with a full thermos of coffee. No refill breaks would keep me from finding out the truth tonight. As 2 o'clock approached, my bladder began to complain about the amount of coffee I had been drinking. Try as I might to suppress the urge, It became futile as it went from gentle urging to downright pain. No longer able to hold it, I went to the bathroom quickly, relieved myself, returning to my post quickly. Upon arriving, my worst thoughts had come true. Settling into my chair, I stared out, aghast at the sight of a clean yard yet again. The clock read 2:01 a.m. What the hell is going on? I said to myself, as if the window had somehow betrayed me. I ran downstairs and outside, heading across the street to examine the state of my neighbor's yard. I rubbed my eyes to be sure. It was clean. Not one hint of garbage that had been strewn throughout was evident. Scanning the entire yard, I found nothing out of the ordinary, but my eyes fell on the house. A slight movement caught my eye. In one of the downstairs windows was an outline of a person. It was Sam. He was staring out the window at me. Our eyes locked as he took a sip of coffee and grinned, then disappeared. I shivered despite it being an unseasonably warm morning, then retreated to my house, finding myself suddenly feeling very exposed. I went to bed and fell asleep into a deep sleep, not waking up until the afternoon. I did my work and prepared for my evening routine, but this time I was determined to find proof. I found my old video camera. You know, the ones that had to sit on your shoulder because they were bigger than a shoebox and weighed like 20 pounds. I charged the battery and went through old videotapes to find one to use. The label had been written on and crossed out many times as it was repeatedly recorded over. The last thing that was written on it was The Simpsons. I put the tape in and rewound it to the beginning. Digging out my old tripod, I set it up in front of the window and waited. Once the evening assault of trash had ended, I aimed the camera at the neighbor's yard and hit record. Leaning back in my chair with a smile, I had no doubt I would finally solve the mystery. I sipped my coffee and waited, knowing that it didn't matter if I fell asleep. The camera would do its job and record the whole thing. The whirling sound of the camera as it recorded, combined with my slow rocking, sent me into slumberland once again. I woke up with a start, not knowing why. Stretching and rising out of my chair, I glanced at the clock that read 2:02 a.m. Barely able to contain my excitement, I went to the camera and took the tape out, ran downstairs, and played it in the VCR hookup to my TV. The scene played out very slowly. For the longest time, there was no movement. The streetlight's airy glow lit the yard, and the decorations that were covered with trash. There weren't any people walking by, just stillness. I noticed a slight movement in one of the house's windows, and then a flash so bright it made the camera lose focus. And then the screen went to static. What the hell? I said, jumping up and rewinding the tape. Watching again, I saw the movement in the window and then the flash. Right after the screen went to static, I rewound over again, watching what happened next. Next, I tried to pause the video right before the flash. The shaky line of static when you pause a videotape obscured part of the picture. I knelt in front of the TV as though worshipping it, trying to find anything. There was only the static. A blurry image of someone in the window. I couldn't tell quite what they were doing. I stepped closer and took another look. Someone was pointing out the window. I let the video go back to regular speed, playing it a few more times and rewind it after the flash, but nothing else was visible. I sat back on the floor and stared at the static hopelessly. This has been my chance to find something out, and once again, all I felt was frustration. As the video continued to play, the static had ended, and it returned to what was previously recorded, an old episode of The Simpsons. "Want to hear a scary story?" Bart said to Lisa, turning off the lights. "Once upon a time, there was an evil, insane maniac." I turned off the TV and rejected the tape, determined to try again tomorrow night. Going to bed tired and frustrated didn't make sleep come easy. I kept hearing noises, even though looking out my bedroom window told me little wind was blowing. Scratches and thumps were coming from somewhere downstairs. Those damn kids have decided to step it up a notch, I thought. Since they can't seem to get a rise out of Sam, they're coming to annoy me. I got out of bed quietly and went downstairs, being careful to stay away from the windows so they wouldn't notice me. Tiptoeing to the kitchen, I filled a bucket with cold water and went to the front door. There were soft footsteps on my porch. I held the bucket in one hand and the doorknob in the other, and as I approached the front door in one smooth motion, I opened the door and threw the water at the perpetrator. But no one was around. The water splashed uselessly on the porch. I was sure I had heard footsteps leading up to the door. Defeated, confused, tired, and frustrated, I closed and locked the door, then put the bucket back under the sink and went to bed. My mind was spinning, trying to figure out what the sound could have been. The fact was I had to face a startling revelation. Was I going crazy? Was being so determined to discover the secret of my neighbor's decorations causing me to hallucinate? I reached into my bedstand and took a sleeping pill. It was the only way I could make my mind settle down enough. My eyes sat wide open, staring at the ceiling until the pills began to take effect. Just before my eyes closed, I heard a crash inside the house. Jumping up, I searched the hall. But everything seemed fine. Turning on the hall light, I started down the steps, listening for anything out of the ordinary. Pranking people was one thing. Breaking into their houses was on another level. These punks had reached that point. There was no telling how far they might go. The thought occurred to me halfway down the steps. I froze and quickly went back to my bedroom, pulled the snubbed nose .38 out of my bedstand and made sure it was loaded. Pointing it out in front of me as I started down the stairs again gave me a feeling of security, but also dread. Having the gun in my hand was one thing, using it was a different story. Hopefully just seeing the gun would be a game changer for anyone brazen enough to break in. The house was silent except for the creaking stairs that made me cringe every step, knowing I was giving away my position and opening myself up for an attack. I hesitated, deciding if I should continue or not. Someone could get seriously hurt. That's when I heard more footsteps. They weren't loud, actually soft and slow, like they were trying to sneak up on someone. My skin crawled, realizing that someone was me. A chill enveloped me as my feet refused to move. I searched everywhere with my eyes and ears. There was nothing to see except the empty house I lived in for years. With the hall light being the only one on, shadows were cast from ordinary objects, causing them to stretch and elongate the most benign objects. The post at the bottom of the railing stretched impossibly down the hall and out of sight. The grandfather clock in the hallway ran down the entire length of the wall. In the middle of my search, one of the shadows moved. The footsteps sounded with it. The shadow was long and incomplete. Whatever was making it wasn't standing in the middle of the hall. It was off to the side where the light barely reached it. My shaking hands pointed the gun in the direction of the moving shadow. It was an exercise in futility. I knew I wouldn't be able to hit anything smaller than a barn with my hands shaking. The shadow crept closer, still along the wall, barely visible. Was it a person? If it was, the light warped it, making it look bigger, but it still seemed small, as if it was a child. I couldn't imagine one of those punks that decorated our houses every night with TP being this small. They all appeared to be teenagers. But then again, I couldn't imagine anyone breaking into my house and trying to sneak up on me. As still as I was trying to be, I had leaned to the side just enough to make the stair I was standing on creak. And in the silence, it was as loud as a bomb going off. The shadow whipped around and stared at me. My temperature dropped to below 0 as my spine froze. When I pointed the gun in the shadow's direction, it disappeared. I went into instant frantic mode trying to find it. It was bad enough knowing someone was stalking me, but when they slip into the shadows and I can no longer see them. My heart was pounding in my chest like the opening drum, a riff from Hot for Teacher. Searching the darkness with my eyes and ears, I heard a whisper from everywhere and nowhere. "Where am I?" it said, followed by a soft chuckle. I plastered my back to the wall. The decision had to be made. Do I keep going down the stairs, slide back against the wall so nothing can sneak behind me? Or do I go back upstairs and call the police? What would I tell them? I heard a shadow whisper in my house. If they came, it would be with 2 large men in a rubber truck to take me away. Before I could decide which direction to go, I heard footsteps from upstairs coming towards me. I glanced up towards the top of the stairs, then back down into the darkness. How could it have gotten past without me seeing it? I decided I wanted out of this house right now. I tore down the stairs and burst out the front door. The cool air hit me like a sledgehammer. Even though the days had been unseasonably warm for October, the nights were still chilly and I was in my pajamas. Running the sidewalk and across the street, I only stopped to look back when I reached the fence of my neighbor's yard. I paused, breathing hard and leaning against the wrought iron fence, looking back at my house as I caught my breath. The wind picked up, sending branches of fallen leaves into the air in many whirlwinds as I hugged myself, trying to fend off the chill. Staring at my house, I saw nothing out of the ordinary. Cold air filled my lungs as I breathed out steam. Was this all a dream? Had I got myself so worked up over nothing? And then I saw it, coming out of the house. It had no form, only blackness crawling along the ground straight towards me. I tried to back away. The fence refused to budge. In my panic, I clambered over it, catching my leg in my pajama pants and making me fall to the ground on the other side. Trying to free my leg as the shadow slowly approached, I eventually ripped the material and released myself. Diving into the yard, dodging gravestones as I ran, I glanced back to see if it was an impossible thing was following me. I overlooked the gravestone in front of me and painfully slammed into it with my knee, causing me to stumble and fall. My head hit one of the stones on the way down, making stars appear. Opening my eyes, I peered up at the sky, only to find it covered by inky veil. I sat up and felt my head coming away covered in blood. Wiping it on my PJ pants, I pressed my palm to my temple again. This time it came back with less blood. I must have hit hard enough to ring my bell and open the skin, but not cause serious blood loss. As I gathered my wits, the fog crept in. It was so dense, I had trouble seeing more than a few feet away from me. I stood and did a slow pan around. Could no longer see my house. My neighbor's house was gone too. I was alone in a sea of gravestones. At least I hoped I was alone. The thought reminded me why I was here and made me search for the possessed shadow. My sense of direction was lost in the thickening fog. There was no indication of where I was going or where I had been. Instead of waiting for the inevitable to find me, I picked a random direction and started walking, my head on a swivel, looking all around for the shadow. As I searched for the putrid yellow light of the glowing fog, gravestones began to move. They slid forward, backward, left, and right, all independent of each other. Had it been any other time, I might have been interested in the choreography as they did their ballads. But I was trying to escape the supernatural shadow and didn't have the inclination or the time to stand and watch. As I stepped forward, the stones finished rearranging, and I was left with a path stretching out in front of me, disappearing into the fog. I scanned around trying to find the streetlight, use it to guide me back to my house. But all the fog glowed yellow, no part was brighter or dimmer. As if to urge me to my decision, I saw the shadow creep over the gravestone behind me. I ran down the path lined with stones as fast as I could. Soon I came to turn but kept running. After right and left, I followed as the stones guided me down my unwitting trail. They bound back and forth for what seemed like forever, and I slowed, not because I wanted to, but I had stitch in my side and my breath was coming in ragged gasps. Soon I was down to walk. Holding on my side, I tried to control my breathing. My heart, which had been machine gunning in my chest, began to slow as I continued walking. I glanced, looking back for the shadow, but knowing there was no way I could escape it. With the gravestones keeping me hemmed in, and my heart rate still at heart attack levels, I accepted my fate. If the shadow called up to me, there was nothing I could do about it. As I considered sitting down and giving up, a hint of light appeared up ahead. It wasn't much, about the size of a candle's flame from where I stood. It was mesmerizing and drew me to it. All thoughts of the shadow were pushed aside as my mind focused on only finding out what the glimmer of light was. I walked steadily towards it, but it didn't seem to come any closer. Determined, I increased my speed to a power walk, but still it remained out of reach. Finally, I broke into a full run. My exhaustion long forgotten, the mystery of the light was all that mattered. After a solid 10 minutes of this, in which the light was no closer than when I started my pursuit, I slowed, breathing hard, and once again feeling my heart doing the Macarena in my chest. The gravestone still kept me hemmed in both sides, leading me towards the light. The fog had lifted just enough for me to see the light in the distance, yet on the sides where the gravestones kept me captive, it was so thick I couldn't see past my stone captors. I sat on the closest gravestone, trying to recover my energy, when I heard a faint whisper from somewhere in the fog. "Don't stop now," it said. "You're almost there." I whipped my head around in every direction, searching for the disembodied voice, but the fog refused to give up its secrets. "Keep going, you'll see." "But the light keeps moving away from me." The only answer I got was a soft chuckle. I got up and resumed following the light, wondering how my neighbor's yard could be this big. As I walked, focusing on the light, I didn't notice the set of stairs appear in front of me, leading down into the darkness. I found them the hard way, as my foot went out into open air instead of solid ground I was expecting. I tumbled down the stone steps and landed hard at the bottom. Feeling around at my various pains for injuries of rolling down the stairs, there wasn't anything bleeding. I took that as a good sign as I painfully rose to my feet, only to face a solid stone door. It appeared to be something from a burial crypt. It gave me chills. I stared at the door for a long moment, then looked back up the stairs, deciding if I wanted to continue. The decision was taken out of my hands as the door slowly creaked open, and I glanced back to see the stone stairs retracting into the ground and disappear. There was no other options. I peered inside, looking left and right, but only the light shone in front of me. The former stairs now formed a wall and moved forward, pushing me into the open door. I stepped forward into a hallway with torches hanging on the wall, leading the way deeper inside. There was a muffled thud behind me as a stone wall met the doorframe, sealing me inside. My only comfort was the gun I still held in my hand. Starting down the corridor, I heard the whisper again. "You're almost there." Gripping the gun tighter as I continued down the corridor, the stone walls and floor echoed my every footsteps, making it sound like someone was following me. A glance behind the check, but darkness was all I saw. For a fleeting moment, I thought I saw a shadow dart towards the wall. Shaking my head, I wrote it off as an imagination, letting this place mess with my mind. Wishing I had gone back to my bedroom and called the police, I continued down my forest path toward an unknown future. What was it waiting for me? Why had they chosen this elaborate ruse? I knew this had nothing to do with my neighbor. No matter how much he overdecorated, this was something else, something supernatural. A glow ahead of me grew steadily brighter as I approached, and the hallway door opened into a larger room. The gun drifted upward, pointing to the thing that sat in the middle. My eyes adjusted to the brightness of the room as it held more torches, allowing me to finally view the entity responsible for this ruse. It was impossibility that sat before me. On a raised dais sat a throne. What was on the throne was nothing, at least nothing tangible. The lights all around it lit the throne, but on the seat was a shadow. The shadow. As if a small person was sitting on the throne, only their body was invisible, yet somehow cast a shadow? "Congratulations," I heard it whisper. "You've just begun your journey. What do you want from me?" I said, aiming the gun at the absence of light, as it would somehow hold it at bay. "You misunderstand," it whispered. "I require nothing from you. It is you who will need my guidance." "Guidance for what?" The shadow didn't answer. I felt the room grow warm as the light from the torches grew brighter, and I had to cover my eyes to hide from its intensity. I opened my eyes to find I was back in the upstairs room, my camcorder set on his tripod, looking out towards my neighbor's house and his clean yard. I whipped around looking for anything out of the ordinary when my eyes fell on the clock that read 3:13 a.m. Chuckling at my own foolishness, I got up and yawned and stretched, then took the tape out of the camera and went downstairs to my TV, knowing already what it would show. I stuck it in the VCR and played it anyways. The yard full of decorations was covered with teepee, eggs, and corn just like before. Only this time I watched as a figure in the window pointed, and then the flash consumed the picture, but instead of static, the tape kept playing. It showed the trash was suddenly gone. My jaw dropped as I watched my neighbor step out onto his porch and examine now the clean lawn full of decorations. He smiled and stuffed something into his pocket before turning and walked back inside his house. "Be careful in your search," I heard a shadow whisper from everything and nowhere. All is not as it seems. I saw a vague hint of a shadow move across the living room and open the front door, leaving me with a clear view of my neighbor's house and an unclear mind of what to do about it. That gave me chills. I hope there's a part 2, because I want to know if he's like a magical creature or like a wizard or like he's doing some type of magic. I'm excited. I hope I get to read more of this. But I love y'all so much. I will see y'all tomorrow. Please like and subscribe.